Hello champions and future champions, hello ChessMood family. Today we will speak about a topic which is confusing for many chess players. Often to our minds come such moves like h4 in the openings, in the middle games, with the idea h4, h5 before castling. So with h4, h5 we will put some pressure on the king side and open the rook on h1. But after h4, what if black plays h5? And now often we look at the position and then think, okay, h4, h5, it's good for us, it's good for opponent to include this move, or it's equal. So there are two general rules which will help you to orient easier to include h4, h5 moves or not. And today we will speak about the first rule. Let's go, I will show you that rule in the practical example. I will flip the board. As the variation I will show you, most of our ChessMood members are playing. After knight f3, c5, c4, knight c6, d4, take, knight f6, knight c3, g6, Maroczy bind, and the g3 variation. After bishop g7, what is going in the theory? White plays here bishop g2, short castle, and here black has some problems with developing the queen side. Because if d6, okay, there is this move in the theory which is related with sacrificing the pawn, knight c6, bc6, bishop c6, but if white knows how to play, they get advantage. And if black doesn't want to sacrifice this pawn, they should take here knight d4, queen d4, and play d6 for further development of the queen side. But now when we don't have the knight on c6, the bishop on g2 becomes just a monster. That's why here, after g3, bishop g7, bishop g2, short castle, the move I offered in our courses was queen a5. A very tricky and interesting move with the idea to play queen c5, attack the knight on d4 and pawn on c4, and also to play queen h5, with this way developing the queen. But often, after g3, bishop g7, people who don't know the theory, they are worried about bishop g2 move, because after knight d4, queen d4, it looks scary. And they play after g3, bishop g7, knight c2. Now the clear downside of this move is that after short castle, bishop g2, the knight is not on d4, and black can play d6, and there is no knight c6, so with d6 black can easily develop their bishop. However, the knight c2 move we can use even better. So what if we play here h5? h5 with the idea h4. It's very obvious that if white plays bishop g2 and ignores us after h4, short castle, d6, here we can create a very strong attack. At some point playing bishop e6, queen d7, taking hg3, playing bishop h3, removing this defender of the king, and then checkmate opponent with this h line, right? Okay, let me illustrate it. Let's say bishop e6 we are playing next. We are playing queen d7, we are playing bishop h3 and then hg3, and after hg3 or fg3, next bishop g2, queen h3, and then it's tough for white. And when we think about such moves like h5, the first thing is coming to our mind is, okay, after h5, what if white plays h4? And now, okay, we included h5, h4, is it good for us, is it good for opponent? And often people are getting confused. What is happening? With h5 move, the biggest downside of having the pawn on h5 is that we are weakening the g5 square. When white played h4, they weakened the g4 square. And who gained more, black or white? And here is a very important thing. Let's say the game continues, short castle, bishop g2, d6, short castle. Now we have a very cool move, knight g4. Opening the bishop on g7, now bishop works, the knight on g4 is doing a very good job too. At some point it can come to e5, it can support another knight to come to e5, in some variations queen b6 will be to attack the f2 pawn, and white will never play f3 because it's weakening all the king side and also it's blocking the light square bishop. After f3, let's say we go back, h6 or f6. Now for opening it, white should play f4, and they don't have pawn on h2, so they can play h3 and cover the g4 weakness. We can go again, knight g4 back. And now when we play knight g4, yeah, we have this cool square for our knight. White cannot do the same with playing knight g5. Okay, if white here had the knight on f3, they could also play knight g5, and it would be equal fight. But now, when we included h4 and h5 moves, and we have here knight on f6, and we played here knight g4, it clearly better for us. This idea comes from anti-Grunfeld variation. After c4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, g3, d5, cd5, knight d5, bishop g2, knight b6. Now, what do you think about h4 move? White wants to play h4, h5, and if black plays here h5, is it good for white to include h4, h5 moves, or it's good for another side? Okay, here it's clearly good for white, because black doesn't have the knight on f6, and they cannot play the same knight g4 move using the g5 square. And here white can play knight f3, and after bishop g7, in future they will have the g5 square for the knight. Or here after knight d5, bishop g2, knight c3, bc3, bishop g7. Again, here h4 move is one of the main moves in the theory. If short castle h5 and create problems in the king side. And after h4, if black plays your h5, then in the future white knight stays on g5, while black doesn't have the knight g4 move. Okay, this is the first key for helping you to orient if it's good for you to include h4 and h5 moves. And in the next daily lessons I will show you the second key. So the first one is simple. If you have your knights and you are weakening the g5, g4 square, and your knight can use it effectively. Now let's go to the very first position. We started our discussion from this position, and what do you think? If you play your h4 with the idea after short castle to play h5. Well, interesting, but after h4, what if black plays your h5? Is it good for white? Is it good for black? Or it is equal? You can post your answers in the comment section. I would love to see them, and at the end, after each of the month, we are recording a video where we are covering all the answers from the test positions. In the next daily lesson, I will show you the second key, which will help you to orient to include the h4, h5 moves or not. So this was the first key. The second key is coming soon. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification button so you don't miss any updates. Thank you for your growth. Thank you for your support. Thanks for everything. See you very soon.